Beijing, China is set this week to kick off its annual parliamentary meetings, which investors are watching closely for signals on economic stimulus. The country's gross domestic product grew by 5.2% in 2023, but overall recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic was slower than many had expected. A prolonged slump in the massive real estate market and falling global demand for Chinese exports have contributed to low levels of consumer and business sentiment. That's all led to questions over whether Beijing will step in with large-scale support. So far, authorities have been relatively reserved. Beijing signaled in December that any new policy support would be appropriate, said Wang Jun, chief economist at Huatai Asset Management, adding, "There's no way that stimulus would be as large as it was in 2008. That's according to a CNBC translation of his Mandarin-language remarks. China's economic policy is typically set at an annual meeting in December by leaders within the ruling Communist Party of China. The meetings this month, known as the Two Sessions, are at the government, instead of party, level and typically release more details on policy plans, such as the GDP target for the year." Wang said he is watching for comments on authorities' plans for the real estate sector, capital markets and local government finances. Back in 2008, when the world was reeling from the financial crisis, China unleashed a massive stimulus package to sustain growth with greater demand. While the economy rebounded, the measures drew criticism for a resulting surge in local government debt. Beijing in recent years has emphasized the need to stem financial risks and clamp down on real estate developers' high reliance on debt for growth, an issue tied to local government finances. This time around, China's monetary policy also faces constraints on how far it can deviate from the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate path. The Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, an advisory body, is set to kick off its annual meeting on Monday. The following day the National People's Congress legislature is due to begin its meeting. Tuesday is also when the country's premier is expected to share the year's targets for GDP, employment and other economic indicators in what's called the Government Work Report. The target will likely remain relatively high, said Bank of China's chief researcher Zong Liang, noting GDP grew by 5.2% last year. That's according to a CNBC translation of his Mandarin-language remarks. He expects the target for the fiscal deficit will be around 3.5% and that monetary policy will also be relatively loose. China in October made a rare announcement that it was raising the fiscal deficit to 3.8%, from 3%. "We expect the on-budget deficit, which excludes special bonds, policy bank bonds, and local government financing vehicle (LGFV) debt, to be set at 3.0% to 3.5% of GDP, narrowing from last year's 3%.